We are continuing our trek through Colossians, and we haven't trekked very far yet. We're still in chapter 1. And I want to follow up with my message today, the message I brought to you last week about Christ, the Logos, and the Arche. And we looked back and explored one of the most profound truths in all of Scripture. We considered the ancient search for the Arche, and you might remember that the Arche was the Greek idea of that which was the source of everything, right? There was nothing, and then there was everything. And the cause of that moment in time was what the Greeks called the Arche. But behind that moment, there was a person, and the Greeks referred to it as a principle, not a person. They didn't believe that there was necessarily a personality behind it, but there had to be something that brought about that moment of creation. And that they called the Logos. Yeah. And the apostles John and Paul kind of brought those two ideas together in their writings in the New Testament and present Jesus Christ as both of those, the source and the principle behind all of creation. For centuries, the philosophers searched for answers. What's the source of all things? What gives meaning to existence? What stands behind reality itself? And so what John and Paul are suggesting is that the Logos has a face. The Arche has a name. And the hidden reality behind the universe has been revealed in the person of Jesus Christ. So today we're going to take the next step and ask the questions: if Christ is the Logos, if he is the personality behind the creation of everything, if he is the meaning behind the universe, if he is the Arche, the source and the creator of the universe, what is his relationship to the universe itself? And that's what Paul talks about next in Colossians 1, 16 and 17, and that's where we're going to be today. He answers that question. He says this: "For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authority, all things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together." That's a pretty profound truth for 2,000 years ago. And as we get into the message today, we'll realize just how far-reaching these words really are that Paul presents to the church at Colossae. Christ, he is saying, created everything. He sustains everything. He redeemed all things. And throughout this message, I want us to keep returning to one phrase over and over again, and that is what Paul says in verse 17: "In him all things hold together." Because of because that phrase is not just about the universe, it's also about us. In him, all things, your life and mine, are held together. Colossians 1:16, Paul begins with a sweeping declaration about Christ. He says this: that everything that exists owes its existence to him. The stars above us, and you have to remember, when Paul wrote about these things, they did not know about the stars what we know now. So the magnitude of these claims even becomes greater in the context of what we have learned about our solar system, about the universe itself, about us. The stars above us, the earth beneath us, the oceans, the mountains, the galaxies, the visible and the invisible, everything owes its existence to Jesus. All things originate in Christ. Paul says creation exists by him. Yeah. Christ is the source, and nothing exists apart from him. Nothing came into being independently of him. The universe is not self-created. It is Christ created. Through him. Paul goes even further. Creation exists through him. Not only is he the creator, he's not just the source of creation, he is the active agent in creation. When we go back to Genesis chapter 1, and verse 2 says, "And the Spirit of God hovered upon the surface of the waters." Yeah. And God said, what? "Let there be light." That voice was Jesus. He is the agent of creation. When God speaks later in that same chapter and says, "Let's make man in our image and likeness and give them dominion over everything we've created," that was Jesus speaking those words. Yeah. He not only created all things, but he is the agent of that creation. The Father creates through the Son, and the eternal Logos is the one through whom all things came into existence. And that helps us understand something remarkable about Jesus' miracles. The miracles, when we think about all of the miracles that Jesus did, they were not just merely displays of power. They were revelations of identity. They showed us who Jesus truly is. Let's consider one of the clearest examples. The feeding of the 5,000 in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. The story is recounted in all three of those chapters. A crowd gathers in a remote place. There are thousands of them. Matthew tells us there were 5,000 men alone, so probably double that by the time we had the women and the children, at least twice that. They're gathered, he's teaching, thousands of people, they're hungry, and the disciples see a problem. We're out in the middle of the desert. These people have been with you for a few days now. What are we going to do? Send them home so they can go get something to eat. And Jesus looked at them and said, "You feed them." Can you imagine? What? Ganupi again. Yeah. Right? You feed them. They couldn't do that. And they came up with what? A little boy that had the wisdom to bring his own lunch, brought 5 little barley loaves and a couple of dried fish. And they presented that to Jesus and said, "Well, this is kind of what we got right here. That's all they have." Jesus blesses the food, and what happens? They distribute it, and somehow the food never runs out. Thousands are fed, 12 baskets of leftovers remain and are picked up. And I want us to when we look at this miracle, we go, how cool is that? But I want us to think of the physics behind this. Okay, a little basket with a few loaves of bread and a couple of fish. Jesus holds up, says, and blesses it and says, "Okay, start passing it out." It never runs out. The Creator is having to create extemporaneously right there on the spot. Think about that for a second. Think about that for just a second, because this is a big deal. Think in the normal process, wheat has to be planted, it has to grow, it has to be harvested, it has to be milled, it has to be baked. Fish must hatch, they must grow, they must mature, they must be caught, they must be smoked and dried. Entire seasons are required to accomplish what Jesus did in an instant. You know. And the creation, and one of the rules of our modern of the universe as we understand it, the law of conservation of energy and matter, is that matter and energy cannot be created or destroyed unless you're the creator, the one who created the rules. You can supersede them. And in this moment, I submit to you, that's exactly what Jesus did. He superseded the rules. Let's think of another example. The wine, turning water to wine. Jesus performed this miracle. This is the first one he ever performed. It was at a wedding. Remember the story? He goes to a wedding. He's with his disciples, the first that were starting to follow him. It's a horrible thing happens. They run out of wine, which was culturally a very big faux pas at that time. You had to have wine for your guests, all the guests you supplied. And weddings lasted days. It wasn't just an afternoon and you have a little reception and you go home. No, it lasted for days. It was a big deal to host a wedding, to throw a wedding. And his mother came to him and said, they ran out of wine. And Jesus, very polite, says, what's that to me? Why should I care? But because it was his mother, you don't ever say no to mama, right? It was his mother. He told the servants, okay, fill these 6 stone pots called firkins, fill them up with water to the brim. Each one holds between about 20 to 30 gallons. So we're talking about 180 gallons, potentially, of water. And then Jesus just says, okay, draw some out and take it to the MC of the wedding to sample it. And they did. And they took it to the MC and who tasted it and said, wow, usually people bring the best stuff out at the beginning of the wedding, and then when people have had a few, then we bring out the cheaper stuff. That wasn't the case. Now, and that's a cool story, but stop and think what happened. Because turning a glass of water into wine is more than just a story in the Bible. Next slide. Okay, this is what he started with, right? An atom of oxygen bound to 2 atoms of hydrogen, H2O. Both of them extremely flammable gases. But in this combination, they're what? Water. So somewhere between Jesus filling up those 6 big pots with water and the person taking the sample out to the host of the wedding, somewhere that turned to this. And this is just the basis of first century wine, the chemical compounds that would go into what first century wine would be. There are still a lot of these missing, but I thought this would be enough to make the point. Somewhere between taking the water out and presenting it to the host of the feast, the water became this. I submit to you again, the law of conservation of energy and matter. Matter cannot be created or destroyed unless you're the creator. And you wrote the rules that make the universe work. And that's exactly what happened, what Jesus did in this moment, right here. Yeah. Water didn't pass through a vine. It didn't become grapes. It didn't undergo months of fermentation. With a single command, the transformation was complete. Why? Because the Creator was present. He was right there. The one who designed water, who invented all of this. We didn't create the periodic table. We discovered it. It was already there. The creator of the universe had already put that in place. Yeah. The miracle was not merely a display of power, it was a revelation of identity. And this is the thing we really need to take home from this. All these miracles Jesus did was to prove he was who he said he was. And who did he say he was? I am. Remember from last week? I am. That's who he said he was. John tells us that this was the first of Jesus' signs revealing his glory to his disciples. And this miracle pointed beyond itself to who Jesus really was. So the one who turned water into wine is the same Christ Paul describes in Colossians chapter 1. The one by whom all things were created, through whom all things exist, and in whom all things hold together. Yet Jesus accomplishes this in an instant, something that normally takes months. Again, why? Because the Creator is present. The one who designed the wheat, who designed the fish, the one who created grapes, the one who designed biological growth and natural processes. The Creator is standing among his creation. Leonard read that for us this morning. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. The crowd saw the bread, the fish, and the wine. The disciples saw a miracle, but Paul tells us that what they actually experienced was the Creator himself. And then Paul reaches for the highest point in this verse. For him. Revelation 4:11, in heaven, the angels, the saints, are acknowledging God's greatness, his glory, and they say to him, "You are worthy, our Lord and God, to receive glory and honor and power. For you created all things, and by your will they were created and have their being." Another translation of "by your will" is "for your pleasure they were created and have being." Jesus did all of this for himself. This is a hard truth for us to get our heads around, because what this means is this creation that we're part of, that we narcissistically put ourselves at the center of, right? It's not about us. It's for his pleasure. He did all of this. We belong to him. We're not our own. Paul says that in Corinthians. You are not your own. You were bought with a price. Not only did he make you, but he purchased you with his own blood. We don't belong to ourselves. Creation exists for him, not merely by him, not merely through him. For him, history is moving toward Christ. Every day we live, we're moving closer to the time where Christ consummates everything and brings it all back together in him. The universe exists for his glory, and that means your life is not an accident. You were created by Christ, you were created through him, and you were created for him. Your greatest purpose is going to be found in him. Your greatest meaning is found in him. And apart from him, it's going to be hard. You won't find those things. Who knows better the purpose for your life and the meaning behind your life but the one who made you and loves you? You know? Because the one who created you knows exactly what you were created for. And that brings us back to Paul's refrain, in him all things hold together. Colossians 1:17, he is before all things. And we want to underscore the word "is" there. He is before all things, not he was before all things. He is. Because Paul understood Jesus is eternal. There's no past tense, there's no present tense. A future tense. It's all present tense. That's what eternity means. Perpetual present tense. He is before all things. And in him all things hold together. Now Paul moves from creation to preservation. It's one thing to say Christ created the universe. It's entirely another thing to say that Christ is sustaining the universe at this very moment. Listen carefully to what Paul says. He doesn't say, in him all things began. No, that's certainly true. He does not say, in him all things once held together. That would be also true, but that's not what he's saying. He's saying, in him all things hold together. Present tense, right now, at this very moment. As we gather here today, and the earth turns beneath our feet, the stars burn in distant galaxies, as life continues all around us, Paul says, in him all things are held together. See, the universe is not running independently of Christ. It is not self-sustaining. And it's not simply a machine, as the deists believed. It's not just simply a machine that God spun up and then lost interest in and walked away, and now it's just been kind of going on its own all by itself. That he's not actively involved in the creation anymore. He abandoned it. No, creation remains dependent upon Christ every moment of every day. And one of the fascinating discoveries of modern science actually helps us appreciate what Paul is saying. So consider the atom. This is a carbon atom. Its atomic number is 6. It's got 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 6 Say it loudly, Brody. Electrons. Right. 6 of them. And just to give you an idea of the structure, it's hard for us to get our heads around this. If the nucleus of this atom were a marble about this big, right here in our sanctuary this morning, the first shell of electrons, those 2, that we would encounter the first one at the corner of 9th and Harding. Catch the distance? The next one would go almost to Penrose. So atoms are mostly space, right? Fascinating. This has been pretty recent, this thing. You know, in the 1800s, they knew atoms existed, but they thought they were solid. And then we go a little deeper into creation. Oh no, they're not solid. They're very complex. There's these protons and neutrons and electrons, and the number of each present in the atom determines what the properties of that chemical is that comes out of it. Right? Same building blocks between oxygen and carbon, uranium and carbon, same building blocks. Yeah. And the number of these things determines what it's going to be. So here we come to the atom, you know, and everything that around us is built on with these things. The chairs you're sitting in that are mostly space, that should encourage you, right? The building around us, even our own bodies. At the center of every atom is a nucleus, and you can see that. I have that inset in there. Now, what makes the nucleus especially interesting is the nucleus is made up of protons and, somebody said it, neutrons, positively charged particles and neutral particles. They have no charge, okay, because the electrons are negatively charged. But when you get to the nucleus of the atom, one of the fundamental rules of the universe is being superseded. There are 4 basic fundamental rules that physicists have identified that make the universe work. Electromagnetism, the idea that negative and positively charged items attract each other, right? Then there's the weak nuclear force, which is the force that binds the atom itself. But the one I want to talk about, gravity is the 4th one. I wasn't going to talk about gravity. Gravity is the fourth force, but the third one I want to talk about is what's called the strong nuclear force. Because this is another force that is present. And go back to the previous slide. Sorry about that. I'm jumping ahead in my notes on you. So here's the problem with this structure. According to the rules of electromagnetism, like charges should repel each other. Right? You ever try to put 2 positive ends of a magnet together? They do this, don't they? They refuse. They say, that's not today. Well, at the atomic level, what's happening that's keeping the nucleus of an atom from just blowing apart? All those positively charged particles, those protons, should blow apart, according to the rule of electromagnetism. But there's another force in the universe. Not Obi-Wan Kenobi, not that force, another force called the strong nuclear force. And it only exists in the nuclei of atoms. That's the only place you find it. And its range is extremely small. But its power is such that it can override the electromagnetic forces that normally would shatter atoms apart. It holds them together. Literally, he is before all things, and by him all things are held together. That's more than just a philosophical statement. I would submit it's a scientific reality. Because the thing that's fascinated me about putting these messages together is the bigger we get going out into the universe, the bigger it gets, the more, it gets. And we realize, okay, there's stuff at play out here that we can't even begin to understand. I was watching a documentary on Albert Einstein this couple of days ago, and he made that very comment. He said, the more I study physics, the more I feel like we are nothing but children at play. Yeah. It's just too big. And the thing that I love about the Lord is the deeper we go in, the smaller we get, the more complex it gets. And this is just, it goes beyond this. We get to quarks and muons and pions and gluons and all kinds of other stuff at the subatomic level that are recent discoveries. And it just gets more and more complex. And it's like, how in the world did something like this just appear? Unless there was something, someone, I would submit to you, behind it, incredibly intelligent enough to be able to develop matter with these properties that would create a universe that we could live in, enjoy, and experience, and to find Him even in the structure of creation itself. This strong nuclear force binds protons and neutrons together inside the nucleus. Without it, atoms couldn't exist, molecules could not form, chemistry could not occur, stars could not burn, planets could not exist, life would be impossible. So the universe literally depends on this force operating continuously every moment, every second, without interruption. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying that Jesus is this force. I am saying that Jesus created this force as part of His material universe. You know, just like He did gravity and electromagnetism and the weak nuclear force. Science can tell us about these forces, how they work. We can get into the fun and the physics of, man, this is amazing, and develop all kinds of mathematical models to show us how it works. You know what they can't tell us? How did it get there? And there's all kinds of stuff happening in quantum physics now and string theory and all this stuff to try to come up with a mechanism that could account for the creation of something from nothing. They're not getting very far. Lots of mathematical models, but nothing conclusive. Yeah. Why do these things exist? Paul's answer is not because there is a force, but because there is a Christ. And behind every mechanism stands Christ. Behind gravity, behind electromagnetism, behind the nuclear forces, there's Jesus. Behind every law of nature stands the Lord of nature, the one who created those laws. And it reminded me as I was writing this of the verse that Paul wrote in Romans chapter 1, verse 20. He says this, "Since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen." To the honest seeker, what Paul is saying, anyone can look at God's created order and recognize someone is behind this. Being understood from what has been made so that people are without excuse. On the day of judgment, people are going to say, but what about all that science? And God said, oh, no. I gave you plenty of revelations of myself just in nature itself. Nature itself pointed to me. You chose not to seek me. From quasars and celestial bodies in space that dwarf our solar system to quarks and other subatomic particles, we find Christ. The natural law continues because Christ wills them to continue. The universe remains ordered because Christ sustains it. The cosmos remains coherent because Christ remains sovereign. Yeah. I'm going to jump to the next slide, guys. In Him, all things hold together. Because the same Christ who holds galaxies together is holding His people together, the same Christ who sustains the atoms that make you up is sustaining your very life. The same Christ who preserves creation has not forgotten you. You know, some of you came in this morning carrying burdens. We know that. Life happens, right? Some of you are facing uncertainty. Some of you are grieving. Some of you are weary. Some of you feel like parts of your life are just kind of falling apart. Paul's words speak directly to you in these moments. The Christ who keeps the universe from flying apart is capable of holding your life together. Do you believe that? Do you really believe that the one who created all of this cares that intimately about you? David asked the question. He says, Lord, when I consider the heavens, the work of your hands, and everything that you have made, what is man that you're mindful of us? What do you even care? Yeah, but he does. Your life matters to him. My life matters to him. And never once throughout the day does he stop thinking about me or watching me and you. He's able to do that. That's how big our God is. Right? So this leads us to one of the greatest wonders of all. The one who created the universe, the one who sustains it, even the one who holds everything together, entered the universe he created. Okay. Up to this point, Paul has shown us what we might call the cosmic Christ, the big Jesus, great in power and omnipotence and glory and majesty and, all of those accolades that he deserves. The Christ who exists before creation, through whom all things were made. The Christ who sustains the galaxies, stars, planets, and even the atoms that make up our bodies. That Christ holds everything together, but the wonder of the gospel is this: the cosmic Christ is also the redeeming Christ. The one who created the universe entered the universe. Next slide, please. And stepped into the world that he sustains. The eternal Logos became flesh. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. Church, never lose your sense of wonder at that. Keep Christmas all year long. This remarkable. What words can possibly capture the sublimeness of this thought? The one who spoke creation into existence took on flesh. The one who created time stepped into time. The one who created humanity became human. The Creator entered his creation. He didn't come merely to display his power. He came to redeem people. He touched lepers. He healed the sick. He comforted the grieving. He welcomed sinners. He wept at gravesides. The Creator was not distant. He came near. And ultimately, he came for the cross. He came for the cross. The one who created humanity came to save humanity. And the one who made the universe entered the universe to redeem the people he had made. And nowhere do we see that more clearly in Mark chapter 14. I want to leave the vastness of the cosmos now for a moment and step into a dimly lit courtyard in Jerusalem. The hour is late. Torches flicker. Religious leaders gather. Witnesses are called. Accusations are made. And standing in the center of the room is Jesus. Not enthroned, not surrounded by angels crying out, "Holy, holy, holy," not clothed in glory, bound, arrested, and accused. What a contrast between the Jesus of Colossians 1 and this Jesus. The scene could not appear more different from what Paul describes in Colossians chapter 1. Yet this is the very same Christ, the creator of all things, the sustainer of all things, the one in whom all things are held together. And standing before the Sanhedrin, there he is. There's an angry mob, all trying to find reason to convict Jesus and sentence him to death. Why? What crime had he committed? Well, none. What was on trial was his identity. It was never about anything he did. It was about who he was. Finally, the high priest Caiaphas quiets the mob. Shh, be still, everybody. And he asks Jesus, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" Now, under Jewish law, because the high priest commanded an answer from Jesus, Jesus had to answer, and he had to answer truthfully. That was a requirement under Jewish law. Jesus fulfilled the law. He didn't come to break it. And so he answered. But I want us to think for a moment about this. Think about the irony. The one who created Caiaphas is now being questioned by him. Yeah. The one who formed every member of that council is standing before them. The one who sustains every breath in that room is being interrogated by the men whose lives depend on him. And the one who holds their atoms together is being accused by them. The Creator is standing on trial before his creation. The Sustainer stands accused by those he sustained. Then Jesus answers. I am, said Jesus to Caiaphas' question. And you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven. Hard for us to appreciate the significance of these words in 21st century America. But in Jesus' moment, when he spoke these words, it was nothing less than blasphemous. Unless he was who he said he was. Then it wouldn't be blasphemy, it would be truth. See, Jesus, in his answer, he went back 1,500 years to Exodus 3. I am, said God to Moses from the burning bush. I am, said Jesus to Caiaphas' question. Then he reaches up into eternity in Psalm 110. You are my begotten Son, today I have begotten you. You are my beloved Son, and today I have begotten you. Then he reaches forward into the future, our future yet. That day is coming. We're studying it in the book of Revelation Wednesday nights. That's a shameless plug. You need to be there. Okay? He reaches forward in the book of Daniel and declares his identity. The Christ of Colossians is standing in that room, the Creator, the Sustainer, the King, the Judge. And these mortal men are putting him on trial. What appears to be weakness is actually sovereign love. Think of it. At any moment, Jesus could have said, okay, I'm not doing this, done. And they would have evaporated. At any moment, he could have silenced those accusers. He could have displayed his glory, but he remains and remains quiet. And why? Because he came to redeem his creation. The Lamb of God came to seek and to save that which was lost. That's me. That's you. That's why he held his peace and endured what he endured. And because he did, there is hope for sinners like us. Because he did this Creator. So church, I want us to think what we've seen about today. We're going to share in communion now. And I want you to think about what we've seen today. The one who created all things, multiplied bread for the hungry, who sustains all things, in whom all things are held together, who stood before Caiaphas, who went to the cross, the one who rose again. Today he extends an invitation. Not merely to study him, not merely to admire him, not merely to understand him, but to fellowship with him. Think about that. This Jesus that we've been talking about wants to have fellowship with you. To enjoy you and have you enjoy him as good friends do. But more than that, he wants to be a father to you and make you a child of his. Amen? Isn't that remarkable? Yeah. So today we're going to come to the communion table and receive the cup. I want you to remember the Creator who transformed water into wine. And as we take the bread, I want you to remember the one who fed thousands with just a few loaves. Remember the Redeemer who shed his blood for your salvation. And if you don't know where you stand with Jesus today, am I saved? Am I one of those that Jesus put his hand on and says, I choose you? Have I responded to his invitation to come and follow me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest? Have I responded to that? I want to encourage you today to do that. And you can do it right here at the communion table when you come up and receive communion. If you're not sure where you stand with the Lord, just tell him that. Jesus, I want to follow you. I don't care about atoms and quarks and neutrons and, flip-ons or whatever, Whatever, I don't care. But I do care that my soul is saved and that you know me. You who made me. That you care about me. I want to receive your gift. Just tell him that. You know what he'll do? He'll say, I've been waiting a long time for this. And he'll knock, he'll come in. He says, I'm knocking on the door of your heart. If you hear me knock and you answer, I'll come in and have tea with you. Actually, it says, I'll sup with you and you'll sup with me, but that's a fancy way of saying we'll have tea. That's the creator of the universe, and that's what he wants with you, for you to experience him like that. I'm going to invite Austin to come up and take us through the communion process. I've got it right up here for you in my notes, Austin. You can just pick it right up from here.